Video games are fun. I know, very hot take. But what truly is the purpose of video games? Are they worth the time and money? Could you be doing something better with your lives? Well, these are all some very deep questions. However, what I will talk to you about and hopefully convince is why single player games are better than multiplayer games. Now, some of you may agree with me, and some of you may be trying to find my address already to send me an airstrike. But this is not just my own opinion. Originally, this video was supposed to be a multiplayer versus single player video, where they were both equal. However, as I did more and more research, it became pretty apparent to me that the video was turning one-sided. So I decided to scrap the whole idea of single player versus multiplayer and go all in single player games. That is why I will convince you that I am right and you are wrong with my indisputable arguments better than a dream debunking video or a game theory episode of Five Nights at Freddy's. For clarification, everything here is mostly regarding PC and console games, not mobile games unless outright said so. And this is because most mobile games have fallen off. If you want to know more about it, you can see my previous video. Secondly, I will consider a game single player or multiplayer based on its intended gameplay, and whether you can play online. So for example, games like Elden Ring and Enter the Gungeon, which are two very different games yet both have co-op features available, will be regarded as single player since most of those co-op features have limitations, such as only being available locally, or not in all areas of the game. Finally, games that can be played largely in both single games and multiplayer games like Minecraft and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, both of which are, again, very different games, will be called upon their single and multiplayer experience individually, separating single player gameplay and multiplayer gameplay. With everything out of the way, let's get right into the video. Firstly, let's talk about quality. This does not refer to the pixel quality or art style, as I decided not to include that here because if I did, then it would be a complete victory for the single player games. Just Google up the highest quality games and they will all be single player. I mean, there exist some games like Truck Simulator. Do I even have to say more? No. The quality I am talking about is technical quality. The things this takes into account are things such as bugs, loading time, platform optimization, and finally, lags or crashes. At first, before researching, I thought that both single-player and multiplayer games are equal in terms of technical quality. After all, it does not depend on whether a game is single-player or multiplayer, it depends on whether the game is well made and tested. People find glitches all the time, and it doesn't appear more in multiplayer games than single-player. That is what I thought, but the fact is that multiplayer games, even if made better than a single-player game, depends a lot on your Wi-Fi, and more accurately, your ping. Particularly in Minecraft and Roblox, there are cases where lag can get so atrociously horrible that it just makes the game unplayable. At the point, it's better to not have any Wi-Fi and do something else than a multiplayer game. The worst part is that in a couple games, particularly Minecraft, there are some methods made to literally increase the lag and even crash the game. But apart from the Wi-Fi issues, multiplayer games are always updating, meaning new bugs can always be found, whereas single-player games, especially old or completed ones, don't get many new updates. So overall, in terms of technical quality, single-player games come out on top. The second thing which I want to talk about is community. This may seem abstract, but I think it's an important thing since it's the core of multiplayer games. As you are essentially interacting with other players both in-game and externally, at first it may seem obvious that multiplayer games are superior in terms of community, since many FPS games have lobbies and require team strategy. But these are a double-edged sword. I'm sure many of you heard about the myths of COD lobbies, or even how some War Thunder players consistently steal files from the Pentagon to make their game more realistic. I know that Brawl Stars, a popular mobile game, was once an event which gave rewards for merely using the thumbs up pins in matches because the community was so toxic that it would be common for people to rage quit. This is generally a problem through all multiplayer games, just having people BMing everywhere. And if you include the multiplayer game community as a whole, it gets a lot worse if you include social media. One unpopular opinion, and you get hit with, however, that doesn't mean the single player games have zero community. Many games have tutorials, walkthroughs, and many have content creators, often doing challenges or trying to break world records. A few games that come to mind are Hollow Knight, Five Nights at Freddy's or FNAF for short, Undertale, and Legend of Zelda, particularly Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. All of these games are completely different in genre, yet all of these have these massive communities, analyzing the lore, expanding on gameplays through mods, and many of these, despite their age, are still relevant to this day, unlike popular multiplayer games that come and go. I have found one exception to this though, and that is Minecraft, which is still thriving to this day. However, Minecraft is different from all the other multiplayer games as it is a sandbox game. And even then, people eventually get tired of it after their 2-week Minecraft phase. The best for last, the reason why single player games are better than multiplayer is Immersion. I would have said the enjoyability of the game, but not all games are played to be enjoyed necessarily. There are many horror games which people play to get scared, and other games like Geometry Dash or Getting Over It are literally built to rage bait. Immersion is about how successful the game is at making you escape reality and bringing you into the game. How does it do this, you may ask? It does this through its music, art style, story, and gameplay. Music is used to play with your feelings, make you feel stressed, relaxed, or energetic. The art style can vary from game to game. Maybe it wants to be realistic, like Red Dead Redemption 2 or Siege. Or maybe it wants you to feel it is a distant fantasy world or use pixel art. Art style is also important to some multiplayer games like Super Mario Wonder with decent gameplay but amazing art. Finally, story and gameplay leads to replayability, and not just in the long term, but whether you will continue playing for 20 minutes, 1 hour, 5 hours, or a week, I put gameplay and story together since both have the same driving effect, making the players want to play more. Imagine playing a game like Elden Ring and removing the lore and mysteries in it. There are even some games that heavily rely on its story like Persona 5 or Doki Doki Literature Club. Whereas most multiplayer games like Marvel Rivals take popular characters that already have a story and focus on the gameplay such as balancing and the other factors of immersion. Overall, I think it's quite clear that single-player games are superior to multiplayer games in most of these. However, when all is said and done, there is one way in which multiplayer games completely outshine single-player games, and those are party games, or games where you can play with your friends. These party games such as Mario Party, Gartic Phone, and even Dungeons and Dragons. Most fighting games like Smash Bros. And Brawlhalla, most multiplayer games where you have some sort of lobby to play together with your friends, so this includes first-person shooters and third-person shooter games as well. And especially Minecraft. Basically, if you have friends to play with, a bad multiplayer game can become better than a great single-player game. Take Among Us for example, a simple game that exploded during the COVID season, with its core gameplay revolving around human interaction. It was so popular that you even had people like Mr. Beast playing it. This is the end of the video. Hopefully, you are now convinced that single-player games are, for the most part, better than multiplayer. If you like the video, why not subscribe? For the record, if you look at my past channel videos, they mainly cover past Supercell games, all of which are multiplayer. So if anything, I would be biased towards the multiplayer games faction. In the end, this video is just an opinion, and could be wrong. And whichever type of game is better is up to you.